Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Fantastic. Thank you
Okay.
very much. Thank you very much. And we also have Estefania, right?
Yes. Good morning and good afternoon.
Good morning, Estefania. Thank you very much for joining with us.
Thank you much for the invite.
Thank you. So, colleagues, let us get prepared. We also have other people joining in. Thank you very much. I can see Orko. I can also see Devendra, Monir Kabir, and others. I cannot acknowledge everyone at this moment. I think it's better that we start on schedule. Parapa, if you allow, we can go online. Sure. Sarwar, give us a cue. Thank you very much. Colleagues, welcome to the session on youth SDG accountability.
This meeting is being recorded.
Voluntary local review. This is one of the sessions we are organizing as part of our journey on youth issues. This is something we really think is an important issue for not only in Bangladesh, but also across the world. This program is, as you can understand, is organized by Citizens Platform for SDGs Bangladesh. We are one of the largest networks of non-state actors involving both CSOs and private sector. And many of the organizations, more than 100 organizations, are our partners. This session today, we are organizing in collaboration with ActionAid. We also have our outreach partner, Southern Voice, with us, and the co-partners of this entire initiative is CPD, EDUCO, FES, Manusher Jono Foundation, TIB, WaterAid, and UNDP. We are grateful to our partners and our collaborators. Thank you very much, everyone. This is an event where we will discuss how the journey of SDGs can involve the youth community in a meaningful way. We all understand the Sustainable Development Goals is one of the pillars of our development strategies across the world. This is not only an international development agenda, but it is also adopted at the national level. And most importantly, probably, we have understood as we started our journey that without meaningful implementation of SDGs at the local level, we cannot implement SDGs at the global level or at the national level. So it is very important that we understand and take cognizance of the local realities. And as part of that, we would also like to recognize that among many population groups, youth is an important population group in the SDG process. So without further ado, I would like to bring in Ms. Farah Kabir. She is the Country Director of ActionAid Bangladesh and our partner. From the organizers, I would like to request Ms. Kabir to share their welcome remarks and introduce or inaugurate this session. Thank you very much. Papa, to you.
Thank you so much, Tawfiq. Again, welcome and good evening, good afternoon to everyone who's joining us. I think the SDGs have been adopted and around for over 5 years, but the deepening of that process has not necessarily been as inclusive as we would have liked it to be. And therefore, at different points, at different moments, the realizations have come that we need to bring on board, particularly young women and men, and understand the perspectives, the thinking of young constituencies across the globe and in every country. And this is why this session today, where we are looking at VLR, and we want to promote the idea of voluntary local review of the SDGs and its implementation process, because unless it's implemented implemented at the local level, I don't think it will really reach at the international levels. There will be gaps, and there will be much that may get missed. So ActionAid, which has been working with young people for over 10 years in a very concerted manner. I mean, ActionAid has always been working with young people, but in the last 10 years journey, there's been very, what shall we say, very targeted, very integrated approach. And it's part of ActionAid's rootedness because it works very much at the grassroots. And in Bangladesh, we have tried to understand how SDGs are perceived, what is the level of understanding of SDGs, because sometimes the discourse or the language is not necessarily friendly for those whose voices or whose participation we want to bring forward. And the youth best understand their predicaments, their requirements, and I would say that we try to understand them, but they live them. And therefore it was very important to bring the youth voice and to recognize among the state stakeholders and actors that they should be in the debate, they need to be a part of the discussion, and they also need to be in the decision-making platforms. So it is, when we talk about leaving no one behind, then that must be practiced by bringing the young, and especially at the local level, young women, young men into this conversation, recognizing that there's just not the two gender, but there is diverse community, LGBT and transgender. So we also need to prepare and give them the platform. And at the national level in Bangladesh, we have been holding these dialogues. We have gone out to different parts of the country, Chattogram, Nilphamari, Borishal. I mean, it's part of our ongoing program, and we're trying to see what is the level, not only of the understanding, but the availability of data, the reports, the engagement of the state actor, the provision of opportunities, and SDGs goals being implemented. Does it really touch the young people? What is the knowledge base and the capacity of the young people to work on SDGs at the district level, at the local that provide public services? Bangladesh works on a basis of a 5-year plan, and right now the 8th 5-year plan is being rolled out. Is it connected? Does it consider the young people? Are they part of the planning? And when we are talking today, we have to remember that we are going through a pandemic, and therefore the health, education, livelihood, informal sector, formal sector, all have been affected. And what is the targeted approach to support the young people? Are there stimulus packages for their education, for the skills, for alternative livelihood? We also have to remember that we are in a planetary crisis, and the young are most affected by this. What is the thinking? What is the planning? So therefore, through these dialogues, we are hoping that we will be able to enhance the political commitment by doing our advocacy and lobbying and engaging with local and national government. We will be able to take this to the global level through your participation and your networks, and create an enabling environment for VLR to involve and bring these groups together. In the context of COVID-19 pandemic, VLR and SDG localization process is more relevant than ever before. And I hope through our discussions today, this will be sharpened, and we will come up with solutions, with recommendations that we can leave the political actors, the state actors, as well as the non-state actors to take forward. So thank you all for joining, and with this warm welcome, I want to start the discussions, Tawfiq.
Thank you, Farapa. Let me now bring in Ms. Rina Jusila. She is the Sustainable Development Expert at UNDESA. She was very much involved in framing SDGs, and now she is involved with the implementation process at the heart of New York. So, Rina, I'd like to bring you in. I'd like to know, and we are all eager to know how the youth can be involved in SDG implementation and follow up and review process, but also how this process called voluntary local review uh, driven by youth can help SDG implementation at the local level and at the country level, and how the event system can make use of these reviews. So I think next 7 and 8 minutes for you, Marina. Thank you.
So much for, of course, inviting us to join the event. It's a very innovative approach that you have, and we're really excited to actually learn about it more. I think that, as Ms. Kapir said at the outset, it's clear that if the SDGs are not implemented at the local level, they won't be implemented anywhere. And even though the goals were indeed forged within the UN walls in New York, the real action has to take place elsewhere. And also not as just stakeholders as implementers, but stakeholders as part of the planning process, and especially the accountability mechanisms as you are aiming at doing. So our Department of Economic and Social Affairs serves as the secretariat of the high-level political forum on sustainable development, and that's perhaps kind of the angle that we look at from especially. While these voluntary local reviews that we are talking about today, they're not officially mandated by the intergovernmental negotiations. They're not specifically referred to in the 2030 agenda. We are quite excited at the Secretariat that they are really gaining traction in the last few years. From our view, we really believe that these voluntary local reviews, they can really provide a number of benefits. Of course, one that we're especially discussing is here is the increased stakeholder engagement, inclusiveness of our SDG implementation, but it's also a tool for enhanced data gathering, serving as a tool for enhancing multi-level governance, dialogue between different levels of governance, and also tackling geographical inequalities. It's something that we have especially seen now, that there's interest in making sure that those marginalized regions and cities are actually also included in these processes. And from the global level, maybe it's good for you to also know that this enthusiasm that we have has been shared by many national governments, thankfully. For the first time this year, these voluntary local reviews will actually be reflected at the high-level political forum in July. We have a dedicated session that will be taking place on 8th of July, and there the member states and all other stakeholders will be discussing how we can best use these voluntary local reviews. So I hope that you will also be able to join and listen in, and perhaps also make comments in the open dialogue. Also in the review negotiations of the HLPF that are also ongoing, how the HLPF can be at the global level, the accountability mechanism that we need. The member states have referred to these VLRs and actually encourage the regional commissions to take them into consideration in these regional sustainable development forums. So that's another link that kind of builds from the global to regional to national to local. Just to kind of mention that from our perspective, as we see it, or as we have seen it previously, the VLIs are really reviews of SDG implementation conducted by local governments. And ideally, of course, through an inclusive process with all relevant stakeholders. However, as I just mentioned, we really don't have an official definition of the VLR, and it has been really great to see how kind of the concept has really ignited a different type of actions at the local level in various forms. And these youth-led VLRs are really actually the first of their kind that we are aware of. So we're looking forward to learning more about them. One other stakeholder-led process that we are aware of actually includes an interesting example from Bristol in the United Kingdom, where also a multi-stakeholder network called Bristol SDG Alliance they initiated the voluntary local review process jointly with the University of Bristol. And that process was later endorsed and merged with the City Council's SDG work. But the foundation of that multi-stakeholder network that was actually already working much more actively than the city itself really laid a great foundation for bringing forward those actions that are needed that were identified in the VLR process. And Bristol is actually now working with the national government of the UK in making sure that those voices from the stakeholders in the Bristol city level are now brought also into the discussions at the national level and into the next VNR. Just as a side note, I think that actually Bristol is another example of also an interesting thing that links to the issue of youth. Cities have really, these voluntary local reviews have really been much more effective in ensuring that universities and students are involved in SDG implementation and in accountability mechanisms. Bristol, Espoo in Finland, Mexico City, and many others actually have really collaborated with academia, but also directly with students that have really joined forces with the local governments and are conducting a lot of interesting things for these processes. So we're actually also looking into that on how we can find lessons learned from that for enhancing youth participation. Since I was also asked to mention as the last point how these VLRs actually relate to the national VNR processes and what's our role from the global level. The national governments, of course, are in the driving seat of the VNRs, the voluntary national reviews that are mandated by the 2030 agenda. But we have tried to, of course, also make sure that these VLRs would now feed into the VNRs. So, for example, there's a reference to the VLRs and now in the updated Secretary General's guidelines for the voluntary national reviews. So we encourage member states to take them into consideration. And we've also included presentations on these local reviews in the workshops that we organize for member states for the VNRs. Both at the global and regional level throughout the last year, we've been encouraging them into looking into the local level reviews. And one of the issues, of course, that we try to highlight again and again is that the power of the VLRs to make sure that our SDG actions and review processes are inclusive. We really think that these types of things can make our also the national level review processes much more inclusive, since like stakeholders at the local level are already in touch with many of the marginalized groups and many other groups that should be included and brought into the tent, as Ms. Kabir was just mentioning. Last year in 2020, 3 countries of the VNR countries actually referred to these VLRs. It was Kenya, Uganda, and Finland. And this year, 2021, we expect that hopefully 10 or so countries at least will be utilizing these local reviews in their national reviews also. So just to conclude and mention why we are also really excited about this initiative is that we've, based on our assessment of the 2020 last year's VNRs, 45 of 47 reports actually said that referred to youth, but the analysis and engagement remain fairly thin. So it's clear that there is a need to come up with new ways of engagement and empowerment for youth. And these youth-led SDG reports, they can really provide an innovative tool for doing this. So we're looking forward to learning about them and also hopefully then sharing those lessons learned from Bangladesh also with other member states. Thanks so much.
Yeah, Rina, just before you leave, since you will be leaving us soon, may I ask you a question, just to clarify? Is there any plan at this moment to bring any changes in the guideline of preparing VNR to include VLRs and youth voices in a more meaningful way? At this moment, I totally understand it is the responsibility of the member states to include them. But is there a dedicated guideline or instruction will be coming in the next VNR preparation guidelines, something like that?
Well, actually, as kind of I've a little bit alluded to it, it's a good question. These voluntary national review guidelines were requested from the Secretariat already at the start of the VNR process, and they've been indeed updated a few times. The last update actually happened last year, and we have now included a reference to the VLRs in that guideline. I'll be happy to share it in the chat box in a minute. So the latest version that has been now shared with the 2021 countries actually does refer to the VLRs explicitly. Of course, it's a bit of an issue because it's not officially mandated, but we try to encourage it as much as possible from our side. But yes, I'll share the document.
In my experience, that encouragement is always helpful to make states more responsible in that. But thank you very much, Rina. Well, we hope that we will prepare a summary report based on our discussion, and we'll share it with you, of course. And I hope that will be useful for your future works at the global level. Thank you very much again. Let me bring in Naziba. Naziba is our colleague at the Center for Policy Dialogue, the Secretariat of Citizens Platform. Naziba, you have a presentation based on, we did have one discussions at the national level in Bangladesh, but you also gathered experiences from different countries, and you are going to enlighten us to kick off this discussion to a much deeper level at this moment. Let me bring you in. 15 minutes is fine.
Perfect.
Is it okay? Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just get a moment to share the screen? I'm facing some issues.
Sure. Okay, can you? So we do have Dr. Bhattacharya here with us. Thank you, sir, for joining with us. We have started a new course. Naziba?
Yes. Yes, it is actually.
Great, we can see it. Make it full screen and go ahead. The time is yours.
Thank you, Tawfiq Bhai, for introducing me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Najiba Altaf. I'm a program associate at the Center for Policy Dialogue. And the topic for presentation today is youth SDG accountability and the voluntary local review experience in Bangladesh, and within the context of the global experiences as well. Now, before I begin, I would really like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Devapriya Bhattacharya and Mr. Tawfiq Islam Khan for their endless guidance, as well as Mr. Iqbal Hussain and Mr. Nazmul Ahsan from ActionAid Bangladesh for their really valuable resources that were used in today's presentation. And finally, to Ms. Taranum and Ms. Renuma, as well as Mr. Avril Bhattacharya and his team for their continual support in making this happen today. So I'd like to begin with an overview of the youth and the SDGs. As we can see here, there is a considerable number of goals that explicitly refer to the youth, and even those number of goals that don't refer to the youth have long-lasting serious implications. Given the sheer considerable number, or the sheer number of targets that explicitly refer to the youth, we can see the kind of emphasis that has been placed on youth participation since the advent of Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. As a result, consequentially, we can assume that the youths will play a crucial role and will continue to play a crucial role in SDG accountability mechanisms. This is further followed up with the global context, where over 1 billion youths currently reside around the world, most of whom are concentrated around developing nations. And in Bangladesh alone, more than 50% of the population are made up of by the youths. However, this greater youth population face some of the worst experiences in terms of rising unemployment overall, as well as rising unemployment among the higher educated youths. They also face other issues such as high prevalence of child marriages, high adolescent fertility rates, and even low completion rates of secondary schooling. These are some of the issues that I've mentioned here. However, these issues have really exacerbated during the pandemic. And given this context, we would assume that youth participation in the VNR would be greater. However, the youths in Bangladesh have really not been mentioned beyond the minimal at best in terms of consultation meetings or sharing of the report at the end of the process. And even within those consultation meetings in the VNR, there is an issue in terms of the inclusivity of youth participants that are participating in these meetings, as well as the issues or the diversity of issues that are being talked about. If we look at it, it's usually centering around education and employment, which are important, but they're not limited to that. However, While we nationally face that issue, globally, there is a framework that has outlined all these mechanisms to be used on a national level. Now, this has been set forth by Restless Development through their Youth-Led Accountability for SDGs report that they published in 2016. And it really comes across through with 4 pillars, where youth participation is emphasized in the review and accountability mechanisms, as well as youth participation in gathering and disseminating data for SDG implementation and accountability, as well as ensuring access or equal access to information for youths and public alike, as well as involving the youth in any emerging accountability processes. So the objectives of our discussion really today is sharing the experiences of youth-led voluntary local reviews and creating spaces for youth participation. It's also examining the intergenerational experiences of localizing SDGs, and finally, reviewing the experience of youth-led accountability, holding these institutions accountable for implementing their SDGs, especially in terms of youth-based issues. So overall, we'll be analyzing the scope of involvement of the youth in SDG accountability through the mobilization, localization, and accountability experiences. And we'll be looking at it also from a global perspective, as well as a national perspective, in which we'll be looking at official as well as non-state actors. So to begin with, in terms of the mobilization, we have, if we really look back on the literature, existing literature that highlights how the youth have participated on the decision-making level in terms of, as well as in terms of SDG accountability and monitoring and evaluation, we really see there has been a creation of official roles for the youth. And we see that reflected in the Prime Minister's Youth Council that is in Canada, as well as Ombudsman for the Youth in Burkina Faso. There are also regional initiatives like Youth Multimedia Campaign training programs that have spurred other youth-led initiatives like the Bridge Connect Africa initiative that have really gone on to deliver change in their areas. Then there are other initiatives that are specifically based on SDGs like Hawaii Youth Climate Change Coalition, as well as bridging or enhancing digital literacy among the youth, such as Code Phil in the Philippines. And moving on from the global perspective to the national perspective, Bangladesh has presented 2 VNRs to the HLPF in 2017 and 2020. And in 2017 VNR, the youth have been mentioned. They have been explicitly mentioned, however, only within the capacity of how important their role is, and that the report at the end was shared with them. It is only in 2020 that we see an evolvement from this point where they're invited to participate in consultation meetings. And many of these consultation meetings did not occur due to the pandemic, unfortunately. The other policies, however, there are numerous policies that have been undertaken by the government of Bangladesh, as we see here, about 9 of them, and majority of which focus on the employability of the youth and trying to train them, provide skills development. They're very traditional training programs. In one case, it attempts to bridge the academia industry gap, and that is alleged to result in the high unemployment rates. And this also occurs through focused skill development training. However, on a non-state actors perspective, we see that in relation to the Citizens Platform for SDGs Bangladesh, there are 24 exclusively youth-based, youth-related platforms, 9 youth-based programs that have been initiated by NGOs, and 9 other platforms such as the Debating Council and Debate for Democracy. However, there are other institutions and there are other organizations as well that go into other much more diverse topics, such as involving youths in the national budgeting process through a budget Olympiad, or even the Bangladesh Youth Environmental Initiative that involves the youth in environmental issues that are occurring in Bangladesh and really empowers them to take charge and drive change. What I've also included here is the work that ActionAid Bangladesh has done by pioneering and creating trainer groups who've been educated in terms of understanding the SDGs in their own language, and then learning about data collection all the way up to report delivery. And so they're able to communicate these issues that they are facing with their local administration in an effective manner. Right. And then the second pillar, or the second pillar under the analytical framework we'll be looking into, is the localization and contextualization experience. So if we look at the global experience, for the most part, it's always been centered around education and employment, unsurprisingly. However, there are instances where Right. Yes. There are instances where the VLRs published by countries like Finland and Hawaii really reveal that even on a local level, there are official roles being created for the youth, such as the Parliament of Children Youth Council in Finland and the Oahu Youth Commission in Hawaii. Besides that, there are also processes such as the participatory budgeting process, which is used as a mechanism to involve the youth in such a way that it is used as a means of reducing inequality in Porto Alegre in Brazil, as well as instilling a sense of civic awareness among the youth in Boston and Phoenix, Arizona. On a national level, though, majority of youth empowerment or youth development that occurs on a local level, really, we do have district-based, district-wise youth development offices that provide a range of skills and training opportunities for a lot of underprivileged youths. However, if we look closer into the online platforms that sort of represent these youth development offices across these districts, they really don't offer any other information beyond the services that they offer. And what we really need is the output itself. However, interestingly enough, in terms of localizing SDGs overall, back in 2019, there were 3 Gazette notifications that called for the formation of divisional, district, and upazila level committees. This is for SDG implementation, monitoring, and evaluation, empowering local communities to take charge of SDG implementation in their own context. Within these committees, however, the roles of relevant stakeholders, including the youth, have really not been explicitly outlined or not mentioned. And so this leaves a lot of scope where we can work in. In terms of the official national experience, however, we know that in the VNRs, they have mentioned that the youth have been included in a consultation meeting and that they have had the reports shared with them, but the national youth policy was also mentioned in it. And this youth policy has really established youth training centers. They've even developed training and information technology across 64 districts, as well as provided self-employment opportunities, and even tech-based initiatives for the youths across these rural areas or other far-flung districts in Bangladesh. In terms of the non-state actor experience, the localization, we've seen numerous organizations that work across many districts in Bangladesh and that really work to empower the youths. But one such example would be the Borishal Youth Society, which just happens to be the biggest youth society in Borishal. And while they provide educational opportunities and they provide opportunities where they can upscale their skills, they can upscale their employability levels and gain employment, it also extends into protection of the rights of the youth, such as sheltering young underprivileged girls and so forth and so on. However, in terms of, once again, I will be mentioning ActionAid Bangladesh as a pioneer here because they've really taken SDG accountability and utilized this to use the VLR to their advantage by collaborating or working in partnership with 4 local NGOs across 4 districts to create each of their own youth-led VLRs. And so this VLR initiative really resulted in over 1,600 household surveys, 21 focus group discussions, 40 key informant interviews, and the study spanned over 4 months from August to November 2020, and it focused on specific SDGs, most of which is good health, quality education, decent work, reducing inequalities, and peaceful justice and strong institutions. And while this is a VLR, this is also youth-led VLR, so over 50% of the participants in this VLR process were comprised of youth. And within those, there's a good representation of males and females, and I'm sure we hope to include the other genders as well. The VLR experience, this slide really delves into the more detailed version of the experience that has occurred, where ActionAid Bangladesh has worked with Nari Motri in Dhaka, Badon in Bagarhat, USS in Nilphamari, and the Bangladesh Institute of Theatre Arts in Chittagong. And so I generalize some of the common issues here, and I state that there are some indicators that we're right on track, such as maternal under 5 and child mortality rates. However, there are some common issues that are also shared, such as There's a lack of equal pay for equal work. There is an increase in local conflict, as well as a lack of inclusivity and opportunities, the lack of inclusivity and the lack of inclusivity within those opportunities for participation in local or national level decision making. And so these local NGOs really helped move that narrative of like including youth into this process of SDG accountability. On a global, the third pillar of our framework, which is the accountability experience, we bring forth the global perspective. Now, to really gain insight into how the youth have been incorporated in the VLR process across different countries, we look to the VLRs themselves. And so far, there have been 19 officially reported VLRs published by 9 different countries till date. And the most notable example within those VLRs would be Japan. Japan has a youth platform for sustainability, and they have essentially initiated and participated in producing a youth-led informal shadow report. And the shadow report is to be used as its own support, as a support system to the country's own VNR. Besides the information from the VLR, there was also the Act 2030 program that really empowered and mobilized youth in Algeria and Zimbabwe in terms of data collection, in terms of processing this data and reporting this data and communicating it effectively to enact change in terms of protecting their rights, in terms of the discrimination based on gender, based on sex, as well as the other discriminatory practices that may exist, especially in terms of healthcare. And then in terms of the national perspective, the official perspective, once again, we bring forth the 2 VNRs that were published by Bangladesh and presented to HLPF during 2017 and 2019. And it has been alleged that the terms of monitoring the progress of attaining SDGs was really in part to present to donors and development partners, not so much the people themselves. And so in the 2017 VNR, I'm going to reiterate here.
Najiba, I'm sorry to interrupt, but 3-4 minutes, you can recommend.
Okay, yeah, sure. So the national perspective is just a reiteration of what we've seen in the VNRs happening. In terms of the non-state actors' perspective, we know that that ActionAid Bangladesh has pioneered the VLR movement across these districts, and they've resulted in findings from these VLRs that can actually be collated together to create a shadow VNR to support the country's actual officially reported VNR. And these are just some of the results that have arisen from that. However, the most important thing is the outlook. Looking back on the global experiences so far, the mobilization experience, we've seen creation of official roles for the youths, as well as empowering the youths to take charge of protecting their own rights. In terms of localization, we've seen the establishment of local level youth councils and instilling civic awareness through the participatory budgeting process. And accountability, we've seen Japan with their youth-led shadow report. In Bangladesh, for the most part, this progress has not made much headway, except in the case of the accountability experience where ActionAid has taken charge of this. So essentially, the recommendations are driven from the global experiences. Rather than focusing solely on skills for employment, we would rather empower the youth to take charge and collect data and report back. We would also suggest to include youth beyond these passive consultation processes, and to create SDG-related and youth-based councils, such as the Climate Change-Focused Youth Council. Now, these are some of the discussion points that were brought forth from the previous national dialogue, and which was held by Citizens Platform in partnership with ActionAid Bangladesh as well. And number one is that the local initiatives, while they need to empower the youth, they also need to raise awareness about the SDGs, because a lot of youth and a lot of people on a local level do not understand the SDGs. And in terms of that, there needs to be records of the progress of the youth post graduation from these programs. Number three, there needs to be an accountability mechanism that holds respective governments or non-governmental institutions liable, because if there's no accountability mechanism, there's no incentive to perform. And finally, youth councils are well and good, but there needs to be promotion and protection of the safe space for discussing these ideas and debating them. And finally, most important, in these times when unemployment is rampant, especially among highly educated youths, youth unemployment allowances are more important than ever. Thank you so much for listening. I hope it was very informative.
No, thank you very much, Naziba. I think it was a good summary of what we have learned in Bangladesh, also comparing them with some other countries. So we will definitely discuss and learn more from the participants of other countries. Let me bring in Mr. Dasagar Sreshta. I'll bring you a bit later on. Let me bring in first Ms. Swaiba Zibrin. Swaiba, you're here with us? Swaiba Zibrin is the head of program in ActionAid Nigeria. You have also worked with youth in producing VLRs in Nigeria context. So can we listen to you, learn from your experience and your reflections on what we have presented so far in terms of Bangladesh's experience and countries from around the world. For next 5 minutes, Swaiba, is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
So thank you very much. This is an exciting experience. Listening to the experience of Bangladesh inspired me a lot, and I feel that there's a lot to learn from each other. We started work on the SDGs 5 years back, and then our point of entry is the community mobilization, identifying the understanding of the communities about SDG, and we realized that there is a lot of gap in the connection between what government has planned and what information goes in there. And we try to really have an understanding of the fact that SDG is not a project. It is about the responsibilities is linked and being built within the different agencies of government to be able to implement is to apply those principles, and then making sure that we have the gender responsive services, we have the youth involvement, and then the climate resilience processes and so on. So with that understanding, we started generating data and information. And so mostly by youth. And so there was data collection, and then at the end of the day, after they collected their data, you compare it with the government plans. Most of the plans are quite different from what youth have collected. And so the strategy we took next is to engage with what is called strategic partnership. So meanwhile, we rely on the data that is generated from the communities led by the young people and linked to a national level or a state to national level dialogue or accountability mechanism, which is driven by the civil society organizations at state level first. We call it an inclusive forum for accountable society because we feel everybody has a responsibility. So by the time we have that, the youth are able to make that presentation into IFAS, then at ActionAid level, we establish relationship with all the agencies that are being questioned in the implementation of their mandates that will lead to the achievement of the SDGs. So we are able to present those data, especially how the young are isolated, how women are isolated, and then you find out that there was a lot of connection, and then there's shift in different government programs that we have seen. Through that, more than 500 young people have gained service from government and then employment opportunities. But then we also went ahead to open up centers in the community, what we call breaking the digital barriers, because one of the gaps is the issue of technology. There's a lot of the barriers. People are not getting connection. They are isolated, no services in the communities and so on. So we established some of the centers as pilot, where young people converge, discuss, and then their issues and connect from one community to the other. So all on their own. And then gradually we will also link these whole processes with the new opportunities that we had, the youth-led digital, digital project. So we had that project, which though it has ended, but it has built capacity of young people for data collection using technology. So they are collecting data digitally and they're able to pull it together for further engagement with government based on what is reality on ground. And recently, after all this data, and we have gone into partnership with the overall civil society organizations at the strategic partnership level, and then with the body that the SDG coordinating body that is established by government. We are there so that we are able to get all the information that is required and also throw in the contribution of our people within that sector. But the one big step that we've taken again is to isolate the young people among even those civil society organizations. So we now have a partnership or joint collaboration with the young people, the youth SDG network. So that's why Joshua is in this call. He is the coordinator of the youth network on SDG in Nigeria. And then there's Adewale, who is also working directly with them.
Just one point I would like to highlight. How did the Nigerian government react to your initiative? Do you have any engagement with the government at the national level or at the local level?
Yes, and that's why we call the Inclusive Forum for Accountable Society and the Strategic Partnership Forum. NIFAS and IFAS, at the state level is IFAS. And then these issues are generated from the communities by the young people, brought into the center, and then it is deliberated. And the particular agency of government that is identified with that particular issue is the point of contact. And we now target that particular organization or agency until the issues are resolved. And this whole process.
Which agency is this?
Okay, so it depends on the issue. The last issue that we dealt with is issue of livelihood, absence of livelihood among young people and women. And the agency in focus at that time is the Ministry of Women Affairs and the Ministry of Women Affairs and Youth Development. So we targeted them, they made presentation about their programs. And then again, in that process, there was also another agency, the SMEDAN, Small and Medium Enterprises, that were also brought in. Now that I'm talking to you, many young women have gotten employment in terms of getting services from these agencies where they were not in the budget before. So we have tackled the issue of livelihood and employment at that level. So at national level, we are calling in, we have the strategic partnership where everybody come to make a presentation. What is it that you are mandated to do? How are you doing it? Who is engaged? And how is the work affecting young people in Nigeria? And so in the presentations, we are able to bring the facts, and then they are able to take on board and then adjust their plans to make sure that young people are engaged and then they are involved in the whole process. Major challenge is that they don't share their budgets. Okay, we said yes. No, if you don't want to share the whole budget, but what we want to see is the inclusion. So even if we don't know the overall budget, then we will see the contribution of that fund in the inclusion of the young people and then the number that are now accommodated in the programs of government. That's one aspect. But then back outside that strategic partnership is a capacity building for the young people to understand what the SDGs are, the indicators and the commitments. So they will now engage in putting pressure, because under the Inclusive Forum for Accountable Society, we have the data, that is evidence-based advocacy, the pressure, and then the response. And in the area of response, we build capacity at both ends. So community are generating data and they're generating the pressure. With the civil society, there's solidarity. And so increased pressure on government, particular agency at a time, and then the response from government. So at the capacity of government to do the services or to involve the young people using the human rights-based approach, which include the gender responsive services, is also there. So now we have the young people, and the partnership with the young people in SDGs. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Soeba. I think this is very important that we involve the youth in the policy discourse and also engage them in the policy process, implementation process, so that they can receive the benefits directly from the state. Let me now bring in Mr. Daya Sagar Sreshta. Daya, you are here with us, right? So Daya Sagar Sreshta is the chairperson of National Campaign for Sustainable Development Nepal. He's also involved, I know that in the SDG discourse at the Asia Pacific level with UNESCO. So, Mr. Daya, next 5 minutes for you. I would like to know that how Nepal is reacting to youth's involvement in the SDG process, how the CSOs are coming into play, because you also lead a network there in Nepal, and also want to know how the government is taking cognizance of these activities done by youth.
Okay, thank you, Tawfiq. Definitely, I will share how SDG process is going on and how youth people are engaging in SDG process and how the VLR process is going in our country. Definitely, I will share those things. Recently we have completed one VLR process in one rural municipality that is supported by Action Aid Nepal, and I will also share briefly about that process. And when we say about the situation of the country, we have, regarding the engagement and the participation of the youth in the development and other processes. And actually, we have, separate ministry at the federal level, and the government has also another entity, National Youth Council, and National Youth Council is also, trying to engage the young people in different processes. And at the national level, we have also National Youth Policy. That is very clear policy, and at the district level also, there is, the offices of National Youth Council, and some municipalities, they have also formed their own, local level youth council, and they are also supporting the young people to, participate in development process. And in order to implement the SDG in our country, and there is 15-year SDG roadmap, that is the clear guideline for the whole country to move forward and to work on the SDG in the country. And SDG local government has also recently developed SDG localization guideline. And in Nepal, we have National Planning Commission, which is coordinating the SDG process in our country. And UNDP, that is one of the UN agency, which is also supporting some municipalities to localize the SDG. And recently, UNSCAP has, one pilot project, and it has been implementing one VLR process with direct, direct involvement of the one local government. And I knew that, in Bangladesh also, in one city is also involved in that process. And from the non-governmental side, SDG National Network, it is the platform of civil society organization at the national level, and there is one separate youth constituency group under that network, and the young people in youth organization, they have formed SDG Youth Alliance, and they are engaging at the national level, province level, at the municipality level as well. And basically, the young organization and this, alliance is involved in awareness raising among the young people. And this organization, this alliance has also organized a youth forum in 2019 and 2020. And this year also, they are going to organize youth forum, and where the SDG is, deliberately discussed, and the process of review also happened in that forum. And some organization, they are also, developing the youth champions, SDG youth champions, and they are mobilizing at the local level. And regarding the, the VLR process in our country, through the support of Action Aid Nepal, the one rural municipality, the voluntary local review process was undertaken. That was systematically done. And local government, the local government was also, actors were also directly involved in that process. But one local, NGO has, facilitated that process. And in that process, and we proudly say that, young people, young volunteers were directly involved in the whole process. and even in the data collection process, and they were also directly involved in meetings, consultations, and the dialogue with the different, development agency at the local level, and they directly participated in the whole process. And we, when during the VLR process, we try to review the participation of the decision making young people in the decision making process, and how the investment has been being done targeting to the young people, and how they are getting the benefits from the development interventions. And we we also try to review how the whole process, the young people are engaging, and in sectoral development process also how young people are being engaged. And we reviewed the 8 goals. I don't want to explain more. And we try to review the health, education, gender equality, waste, energy, economic growth, inequality, and the climate change. And these were the major goals which were reviewed in that process. And we seriously consider the indicators identified by the SDG roadmap, and those indicators were seriously progress in those indicators were seriously in that process. And definitely this VLR process enhanced the knowledge and skill of the young people who are directly involved in the process. And they also this process also empower the young people, especially at the who are living at the local level and the village level. And definitely we hope that they have improved their capacity to claim their rights. And the main issue we find that in the data gap, data gap is the main issue in this process, and the unavailability of the disaggregated data. That is also the another issue in this process. And very briefly, I want to highlight some issues regarding the VLR process in the country. The localization, still the localization process is the another challenge. We know that SDG cannot be achieved with the direct contribution of the local government, but localization process is not still is still not enough in our country. And the capacity of the local government and the local actors is also the another issue we identified. And the local governments are not able to identify the their local priority indicators. That is very important. Because different local governments may have different priorities, but because of the capacity gap, they are not able to do so. And the next thing is that we experience that local leadership, how the local leadership of the municipalities think about the SDG, and how they take the young people in their process. That is also the matters about for the engagement of the young people in this process.
Thank you.
And
that you can you
yeah, I'm going to close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to close. So the the next thing is that we experience that the political participation of the young people, intervening in the politics is very important to improve the participation and the improvement of their engagement in the whole process. And the next thing, finally, I want to say that the young people, the youth is not the homogeneous group. We have to segregate. We can segregate the young people in a different social groups. So the participation of the marginalized young people in the development process or the SDG process is also the another challenge. So these are some the issues and the challenges what we have experienced in the VLR process. Thank you, Tokvid.
Thank you very much, Daji. I think this is one of the important things, that heterogeneity among the youth group, even within a country. And also you have brought up the issue of capacity, both for youth, but also at the local government level, at various ground. So let me just bring you that now I would like to bring Ms. Estefania Charvet. Estefania is a colleague from Southern Voice Network. She is the head of programs at Southern Voice. Estefania, thank you for joining us. Southern Voice is a network of think tanks from South Asia, Africa, and Latin America. More than 15 think tanks are there, and Estefania is working on SDG issues, upholding the voices of Global South at the global platforms. So Estefania, I would love to hear from you that how useful are these VLRs at this moment in implementing SDGs, particularly at the global level? Are these processes taken seriously? Are the voices from the South, particularly the youth, are adequately heard in the global development process? I would like to hear from you that how we can make this best use of these VLRs at the national level and also at the global level. To you, next 5 to 7 minutes to you.
Thank you very much, Tawfiq. Thank you very much for inviting me. As you already mentioned, I am head of programs at Southern Voice, and our key mission is actually to connect researchers from the Global South with international debates focused on the implementation of the 2030 agenda. So really briefly, like there are several forums where you can be integrated, and us as a network, we have several young researchers developing really interesting insights that we're trying often to connect to global debates. But I would actually build a little bit on the reflections that I heard a little bit more from your interventions and the informative presentation. Thank you very much. And I was, the first thing that came to mind is like, what is the kind of role that all actors beyond the government can play? And so how can we, as a network of think tanks, for example, how can our experiences can support VLRs or accountability and awareness creation about the achievement of the SDGs among youth? And so, as you know, like many of these development debates are now hosted online, and it looks that this is a trend that is going to stay. I don't think this is going to be reversed anytime soon, mostly because I think it supports a more inclusive global governance. And there is this huge opportunity to see young people across the global South who are more able to be involved in SDG processes, including at the global level. This is, of course, if we compare it to, for example, a previous generation. So this is great window of opportunity that I think that we can potentially grab. And precisely because of this, I think that this is so important to empower more youth with ICT skills that it was mentioned. So we know that lack of data is an issue, and let me connect these two dots, because I think that we can leverage the potential of ICTs to hear more youth perspectives, to amplify their messages, and to reach out to global audiences and international debates. And I think that in this regard, allow me to share an experience that we had by creating a knowledge hub, and how this helped us to amplify data and knowledge and expertise. So when the pandemic started, at Southern Voice, we also started compiling analysis that were produced by our members across 25 countries of the Global South. And the aim of this initiative was to create a credible resource for decision makers and other key stakeholders to understand the pandemic better from our Southern perspective. And to date, I have to say that we have over 800 resources among reports, articles, podcasts, videos, and alongside we have set up a database of experts through which anyone visiting the hub can get in touch with any of the researchers featuring their work in this knowledge hub. So thanks to this, so far we have received requests such as panel invitations to international conference, comment requests from journalists, and some other types of requests. So clearly showing the potential of these kinds of platforms to connect and to bridge certain types of groups, like this could be youth groups with international debates. So as the Digital Knowledge Hub allowed us to leverage this collective expertise of our network, the same kind of resource can be put at the service of youth-led initiatives, as you have mentioned. There are plenty of them, and I think they could really benefit from this kind of boost that the Knowledge Hub could give. So, and I think that increasing participation of youth in accountability processes can certainly benefit from these type of platforms, not only because it can help bringing the youth voices into the discussion, it can help us understand their priorities and as well as potential gaps in data or in knowledge. It's also important to mention that the knowledge that the youth can add to the debates can help contextualize and interpret all sorts of data that are currently available. Something else is that this knowledge hubs can also be of great help when gathering all sorts of data and information produced at the national level about the challenges experienced by young people. So I cannot emphasize that even more. The knowledge of local researchers can really help gaining a better understanding of, for example, how COVID is affecting the achievement of the SDGs, specifically among people. And this goes from challenges related to, for example, disrupted education, to lack of employment opportunities, specifically for the youth. And just to finish my intervention here is the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because I could not emphasize enough the importance of local knowledge and the use of ICTs as amplifiers. And there is a clear need to empower the youth with data collection skills, but also on how can they leverage on already existing platforms focused on generating local knowledge. These tools are powerful enough to support VLRs, create awareness of the at the national level, but also at the global level, and therefore they have the potential to mobilize all kinds of resources needed to create the spaces where young people can share their ideas, but also help documenting processes towards meeting the SDGs. I think I'm gonna stop here.
Thank you, Estefania. Thank you very much. Let me now bring in Vitor Mason. He's from Brazil. He has experience working with youth and on SDGs issues. Vitor, you can hear us?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you for the invitation too. As we know, we are in a big trouble in Brazil. We have a president that don't believe in UN and the WHO, so he don't follow this organizations. So it's a big question for us. Our spotlight report, as the mentioned shadow report, we call here spotlight report, is the unique document to monitor the SDGs. We have an official VNR, so we are producing as a group of a working group of the civil society. A new version of this in July. We always do this for the HLPF. So in July we have another version updating this monitor that shows our bad situation about the sustainable goals. And so it's the national level. On the local level, we have mayors. As Stefan said, that we have mayors here that follows Bolsonaro, so they don't talk about the sustainable goals and target, but we have another ones that can implement some 4-year plans looking for the SDGs. But we do, as the organization that I am the executive coordinator, the Casa Fluminense, we call here in Rio de Janeiro. What we do is start the co-creation of some informative materials with lots of data about these cities, these small cities around the capital, around Rio de Janeiro, in the outskirts of the metropolitan area. And we elaborate some proposals about public policies and made by who lives in these places, who lives in the outskirts. So our organization, we offer courses and workshops and capacity these groups to use the 2030 agenda and identify leaders, local groups to lead this process of producing a document that we showed some data about the cities and some proposals. And we call this agenda, local agenda 2030. There is a noise that is disturbing a little bit. Okay, thank you. And this data, as we have our census canceled, another thing that this the federal government of Brazil did was to cancel the census, so we don't have the official research about official data. We do what we call citizen-generated data. People from the outskirts doing researches and doing constructing their own data and looking for the families, especially the poor families that are around the organizations there. And this census was canceled even before the COVID pandemic. So it's not an agenda of produce information. It's not the point. It's not the aim of this government. So we produce our own baskets of indicators. We call this inequality maps. I can share the link here. And we do this looking for the SDGs and put even on each goal the data from the territory, from the place. And this is the basket of indicators, and we have these groups involved in the distribution of baskets of food in this time during the pandemic. And so we offer the document that they produce, looking for the local agenda together with the basket of food. It's a way that we find to distribute food. And the document
will be great if you can wrap up in 1 or 2 minutes.
Yes, I just finished. I will share the article that we just wrote, explaining this process and illustrating too. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. I will take a few interventions from other participants. Let me bring in Ms. Reneka Unku. Reneka, are you with us?
Yes, Bhaiya. Thank you.
Yes, Reneka worked as a youth advocate, and she's involved with Plan International in Bangladesh. And she's also working with youth groups as a young leader. Reneka, couple of minutes, tell us about your experience, how you are involved in the SDGs and VLR process in the country within your voluntary involvement with various youth groups, and also what do you think that we should do more to bring youth people in the policy discourse as well? Next couple of minutes.
Okay, thank you. I am Reneka, working as a youth administrator in the Brave Girls. It is a youth network who work for gender equality and ensure youth participation to raise awareness and raise their concern regarding SDGs. And I have attended VNR session in 2020. In March in Bangladesh, where as a non-state actor, we were supposed to hear what has done by what has written in Vienna 2020 and how our involvement has showed there. And after that, I have attended high-level political forum 2020, where I discussed on the behalf of Bangladeshi youth about their participation in SDGs and what their issues is going on in their real life, especially in the pandemic strike. And as Tawfiq Bhaiya says that, yeah, in Bangladesh, we all know we are in a demographic dividend nation. So in this situation, COVID has really, really taught us the importance of virtual reality and the digital participation of every kinds of youth, and especially all kind of citizens. But especially if young people are not participating in a virtual and digital world now, then they will be really way more behind compared to other national citizens, so other citizens of different countries. So that's why youth nowadays really, really want to be empowered in the sense of digital participation, and also want to work in the accountability mechanism thoroughly and more corely, because in our nation we know we are allotted to participate in VNR sessions and many roundtable discussions, which is really, really wonderful. But and our women empowerment ratio is really, really role model in world. But the alarming thing is in the pandemic strike, we were 48, but we are now 50 in gender gap related index worldwide. So it is really, really alarming that we don't have still now no specific descriptive policies regarding sexual harassment and ensuring the participation of girls in ICT and lots more. So which should be addressed to gain all kinds of SDGs, because all kinds of SDGs are related. And for that, really, youths are really, really eager to work in SDG 8, where empowerment will be happening, and everyone needs employment nowadays, because if I am not employed, then how can I raise my voice for my nation or for any kind of global policies like Agenda 2030? It is really, really, it will be really, really sound ridiculous if I don't have I don't able to earn my bread and butter. So really employment issue is so alarming in Bangladesh, because because of pandemic strike, there are lots of people are waiting to be graduated, and the process is really, really alarming here. But hope the positive side is.
Can you please wrap it up in a minute or so?
Sorry, Bhaiya?
Can you just wrap it at this moment?
Yeah. So so really Bangladeshi youth are really eager to work in SDG 17, where NGOs, developing sectors, and government will collaboratively work, and the peace and justice will be happening. It is really, really necessary to fulfill Agenda 2030. Thank you, Bhaiya.
Thank you, Renaka. I think you have brought in a couple of major issues. One is gender empowerment, and the other is employment for youth, and particularly given the COVID-19 situation, this is really becoming one of the major challenges, not only in Bangladesh, in many developing countries. Let me now bring in Qazi Asif Mahmood. He's now a project officer at BRAC. But I think you have worked for quite a few years on youth issues on a voluntary basis, both in Bangladesh and Mozambique. Qazi Asif Mahmood, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for...
Can you speak for next couple of minutes and highlight your experience in Mozambique and also in Bangladesh, and what are the challenges for you to be engaged in the policy discourse?
Okay, thank you, Bhai. So at first, share my experience that how I engaged in voluntary activities. It was in 2018 when I engaged with BSO Bangladesh because in BSO Bangladesh with disaster-related activities. Like my background is disaster management, so I shared my experience and knowledge in developing community-based disaster preparedness plan. There, when I worked with different youth clubs from Bagherhat and Shoronkhula. So the experience was like they eagerly wanted to work with the community to develop their own area. So it was like my first experience with working with the youth, and we worked to ensure that the youth voices always get priorities in the local level, also in the from the root level to the national level. So it was my first experience. Then when I worked with the BSO Mozambique, the experience was totally lifetime experience for me. So it was like the Mozambique youths mainly, like they always try to engage with the different voluntary activities because their economic activities is shrinked. So during this COVID-19 pandemic situation, they always try to engage in different economic activities, and they take it as their employment opportunities. So they have the Ministry of Youth Department. So they collaborate with different voluntary related NGOs, so who develop national level and community level volunteers to assist the government in different ways, like policy formation or like disaster related emergency response. So it was they also benefited from the allowances from they got for voluntary activities, and they also continue their study. By the way, they have two different sessions, like for their universities, those who studied in universities. So they part-time work in voluntary activities, and they after their work they enjoy their studies in the afternoon session. That's how they develop themselves in the national level policy making session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mahmoud, for your interventions. I think both experiences are quite useful for many of us. Let me now bring in Sishani Selvaratnam. Sishani, you're here. Sishani is the International Program and Policy Lead with ActionAid, and she is also working closely with many youth groups on voluntary local reviews. So you have experience from many countries. You are hearing from youth from many countries. So Sishani, next 4 or 5 minutes to highlight what are the challenges that you have heard from youth around the world, and what are the commonalities and what are the differences from countries to countries.
Sure, thanks a lot, Taufeeq. I think in terms of what we are hearing about challenges, this has been actually echoed by a lot of the panelists you have had prior to me. It moves from actually the individual capacities of young people we engage with. So here, we're not necessarily speaking only about those who are educated or in schools or universities, right? But also for ActionAid, it's about young people living in some of those more hard to reach communities, making sure that these are accessible in a language they understand, to actually how to connect with local government, and who makes those introductions or gateways open for them. And then it also leads to more how these address their realities, lived realities on the ground. So I would say, like, in encapsulating, these are some of the key things we are hearing. Our experience from ActionAid is that over the last few years, we have also tried to bring more the voices from communities actually to regional and global spaces. So we have had young people joining the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, the African Regional Sustainable Development Forum, and we also got in voices to the European sustainable discussions. And it's, you might think, why Europe? But also in Europe, you get marginalized communities, right? So we actually were able to get a voice from a refugee for the first time to be speaking about her reality in Denmark on social housing. And why these voices also is because we don't then have the same usual voices who are connected with perhaps more organizations, but can speak to the work they're doing on the ground. This also went into the high-level political forum where we facilitated young people. Vito was one who brought his experiences from Brazil. We also had colleagues from Nigeria, from Vietnam, Bangladesh, Zambia, Kenya. And what was quite important was them speaking to the engagement they have in the countries, the work they do, but having that wider space for discourse between UN, with government, with other civil society organizations to address it. One of the things I think worked quite well for us is a young person we supported from Zambia who was part of also a green movement there. Then later was contacted by his government to support in actually writing the youth chapter for their voluntary national review, and also wanted to know how that could be then implemented with other young actors in the country. So I think this is what we would, of course, like to see happening more across the world. Secondly, we have also from ActionAid developed a strong partnership with the Office of the UN Youth Envoy. She was in Bangladesh back in 2018. 2018, and I think she also met with young people, including those from ActionAid Bangladesh, but also other organizations. Her office reaches out to us when she was going to the field, obviously not anymore due to the pandemic. But we have worked with her closely in saying, can we document experiences of young people? And last year, we launched this report on youth-led follow-up, accountability, and monitoring. It's called Believe in Better. I'll put in the link shortly in the chat. But here we can document about young people's experiences. I believe we have an example actually from Bangladesh where young people were engaged, but also how they worked with the Citizens Platform in connecting. So it's not only young people alone, but they work with existing civil society mechanisms, intergenerational organizations, and bringing issues around climate justice, around gender equality, about having more open space in civil society. All these are quite important. And aside from that, we engage in global coalitions like with Southern Voice, with Action for Sustainable Development, and others who have strong national and regional coalitions. And this is where we try to support that experiences from countries translating to further connections and networks across the world. And I would wanted to say also that we are moving to another step with the UN Youth Envoy's office, where she's connected to all the 130 UN country teams. And the UN country teams are prioritizing youth engagement and participation at the local and the national level. They have gone through and collected the data already, and there is a scoreboard on this. If you're interested, I'll pass it out. But they're also now in the process, and ActionAid is supporting her office in more deeper dives of what does it mean for young people to be actually involved? How do you measure it, and how can we hold governments accountable, but also the UN agencies and others at the country level? They're about to do a large survey with young people across the world. When this comes out, I'll be very sure to pass it on to you. And they're also selecting 7 countries for deeper dives. I don't know the countries yet, so I can't influence which way that's going to go. But I think these are some of the ways in which we have really been trying to promote that youth voice and agency, but also, of course, being extremely, let's say, biased towards getting those voices we usually don't hear from in the wider spectrum. Over to you, Taufik.
Oh, thank you very much. I think we will wait for the next big intervention by ActionAid. I think we have 7 countries here, representatives from 7 countries. So you can think about it. I'll request Arnum to pass the list to Sishani. Thank you, colleagues. I think it's getting late here in Bangladesh and also elsewhere. Let me now bring in Dr. Devpriya to have his final reflections on the discussions. He is the convener of Citizens Platform SDGs Bangladesh, also a distinguished fellow at CPD. He's also the chair of Southern Voice, and he's involved with SDG process at the global level as well. So I'll bring him in for the final reflections and to understand what the key takeaways he could generate from the discussion and also his own reflections. So to you.
Thank you, Tawfiq. Let me start by thanking ActionAid. And with Farah over here, I would like to put my special thanks to her personally for not nudging us to get into this event. And we did a good national and now today the global one. And I'm so pleased to see all of you over here. I always come to this kind of meetings with a mixed reaction. Mixed reaction because I regret that in our own ways, we didn't get this kind of, SDGs or opportunities or linking network. We had a different way of working at that time as a youth, but I always feel good that the new generation are taking it up in their own stride. So yeah, I always come with a mixed reaction, but it's the positive side which dominates. I want to thank ActionAid, all the colleagues from ActionAid who have joined us from all over the world for their fantastic work they're doing. I would also like to thank all the partners who, other than the ActionAid, who are here today. May not have spoken always in many ways, but they're here and their participation is pretty encouraging. Rina is not here from the UN, an old friend from the UN SDG, UN DESA. They are in the driving seat with the global processes, and we have been working with them on various occasions. So, Rina, thank you for joining from the New York on that. We have had the discussions from Latin America, Africa, and Asia, lots of experience, and I really regret that not all of them got a chance to speak. And many of our leaders from Bangladesh are here. I can see the participants from starting from the the DYDF, the CAMPI and BRAC, and many others who are over here, ADD. So please consider that you have been recognized and your contributions are well appreciated, and the presentation put forward by Najiba builds on all of your real experiences, and you are the real frontier people down on that. So what are the takeaways for me? Those who know that I have my grandmother's principle that don't mention more than 3 points in one session, because people will never remember the 4th one. So I will give you my 3 grandmothers' point over here. And possibly taking note of that you are a young intellectual group of scholars, I might venture into the 4th one a bit. The first and foremost issue which is there that from the SDG perspective, we should look at who are being left behind within the youth community. So the youth perception should be more inclusive. There need to be network. We need to reach out to far too difficult to reach youth communities, what we call in our parlance, the disengaged youth, or difficult to reach youth community which are there. So that issue has come out very strongly, whether it is women, whether it's physically challenged community, indigenous people, the third gender, with people living in remote places, all these less networked, less linked people who do not necessarily come to this kind of discussions very much is the most important challenge. That is, if we want to deliver SDG, we will have to reach out to them. And it has been rightly mentioned that youth community is not a heterogeneous not a homogeneous community. Heterogeneity and diversity has to be recognized. This is the first point. The second point is that the pandemic has exposed further the fault lines. So the pandemic has exposed that it has exacerbated all the earlier structural problems which were underpinning the youth problematic, and further has added more into it. So we can go through that implications, whether it is in case of education, the dropout rates, the child marriage, increase in child labor, the nutrition problem, the social discord, violence against women, many other issues over there. But what is coming out very strongly, that at the end of the day, the intergenerational equity issue will come out very strongly. And the employability of this new community who are deprived of education for 1.5 years, which was anyway was bad. And now because of the lack of connectivity and the new digital divide or more entrenched divide has become a more serious problem. And it is going to stay with us even when we have all vaccinated ourselves and virus is supposed to be gone. Because the socio-economic implication will far outlive the health implication. So we'll have to understand that. And whether we will be able to do a reversal on that or not, that is to be seen. So the second, and in this particular case, the innovation, the digitization will be a critical intersectional issue over here in the whole point. So my first point was that left behind youth. The second point is the pandemic affected youth, which has brought more structural problems on the forefront. My third point is the data and information and the civic space. And data, we need more data, we need more disaggregated data, we need more real-time data, and linking it to the digital issue. Some of the colleagues have mentioned how they're doing a new innovative data collection is critical over there, and to protect the civic space within which they can really put their voice out over there in many ways. So my third point will be information, and more in the issue of the agencies, and which I will come a bit more later, and also the protection of the civic space in the post-pandemic period when the state may take a much more authoritarian approach in the coming days. And in the absence of a robust global governance structure, this is not only an issue for the nations, but it is also global in many ways. The last and my fourth point, and I venture with that, is the issue of voice and the agency issue. So it is the demand side issue, whether we will be able to really articulate the demand side issues properly and using the SDG as a framing, agenda for the looking into the left behind, pushed behind youth community, or the pandemic affected pandemic community beyond their health hazards, and getting their data information or their actual, locus standi at this moment in each of our countries is an important issue. But more important is possibly to have the organization, mobilization, and putting them into the accountability process. Our today's discussion, if you remember, as Najiba has told you, we organized it around the 3 pillars. It is about mobilization, the mobilization issue, and then the issue of the content within which we want to seek their support on that. And the last one is obviously accountability. So within that, we will see the accountability pillar will become decisive in order to realize the first 1, 2, 3, which I have mentioned over here in that way. This is an ongoing journey. The colleagues, you are on the action in the field. We will pull up the local level reporting mechanism, more updated, more informed, more structured and cogent, and most importantly, connect them to the national processes, connect them to the local government and on them, and we would never forget also to bring the global process along with it over there. I'm so proud and happy that many of you had been already contributing into this global process, because the global process, without the contextualized realities coming from the ground, from the local level, is nothing but a skeleton in that way. So the life depends on the local level youth community to get into that process over there. Those who are sitting here today, I'm pretty sure they will be the leaders down the line, 10 years down the line. And so I come here, as I say, with great expectations, and I'm so proud that we have such a good set of colleagues over here, starting from ActionAid and all others who have joined us from across 3 continents and are here today till late at night. We are in Dhaka, is almost 9 o'clock. and still listening to all these things. I'm grateful also to my colleagues at CPD, the Secretariat of the Citizens Platform. Tawfiq, you have done particularly well in managing time. You have tried to be gentle but rude. How do you call the gentle rudeness or the rude gentleness within which to manage time? And I'm grateful to my young colleague Najiba for doing a fantastic job. I have Tarannum, who is the focal point over there, and Annesha and Irteza, they're all managing the technology over here. And this event is, in fact, shows that 1 + 1 is not 2, it's more than 3. So because it is when we pull our strengths together, we can do much more than what we can do individually. I really value the partnership which we have demonstrated here today. Thank you very much. Be safe, be good, and we will be carrying on this in the future.
Oh, thank you, sir. I think I do not need to speak any further. Just to let you know that we have colleagues here from 5 continents, 8 different countries, and we are really proud that we have pulled through. And as sir said, that I think it's just a start of the journey. As we move along, we'll find many of our friends here, and we'll bring in more friends. Thank you very much, colleagues. I'm officially bringing it to close.
Tawfiq, we need to say that there will be a record of today's discussion, and which we will be sharing with you with all the experiences which we have taken note of.
Yes, I started.
Farah, you're happy with it, Farah?
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yes, of course. Thank you. And these dialogues are not an end in itself. It's a process. It's it generates energy, and it also creates an opportunity to think beyond the box. So for us, we've been doing this for so long, but we want to continue until that inclusion, those critical perspectives and issues are on the agenda. It's not going to be easy, but we need to do this collectively. And thank you, Devapriya, for being there, and to the entire Citizens Platform and CPD team. But as I said, this is not an end. It will continue, and there are things to be done before the end of 2021.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tawfiq.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. The recording has stopped.
Thank you, colleagues.